We're ready for the start. They're off.
Welcome in, everybody. It's Friday. It's the First Call podcast. Jeremy Plonk, Jeff Siegel with First Bet. We're back after our 1 week a year we take off on Black Friday after Thanksgiving. Jeff, I don't envision you as one of those shoppers, though, who was like busting down the doors on Black Friday last week.
No, I kind of, space it out a little bit, besides, most people, not most, but a lot of people just shop online now. That's what I do. Even though there's a massive shopping center in the parking lot, literally at Santa Anita, where you literally walk over there and do all your shopping. But I just, I've gotten used to just going to the website and ordering it, and that's it. So it's a little different. In fact, the shopping centers are, for the most part, are kind of fading out of the picture as they were so dominant 30, 40 years ago. But the one that we have here at Santa Anita, for some reason, still fills up pretty good. So anyway, we got a month. We can kind of wait our time.
I'll tell you, I did pick up a new television on Black Friday. Good deal on that, and it had all the smart features already on it, including Spotify on there. So I was clicking on Spotify with my daughter, and we were going through some music, and I said, "I wonder if our podcast is on here." And there we were, Jeff, on 70-inch high definition.
That is great.
We look good in 70-inch high definition.
I'll bet. I've got TVs everywhere. I don't need one, but whatever. But of course, they don't cost nearly as much as they used to, unless you really want to buy the big ones. But anyway, I didn't think about that, but that's good. More coverage. That's what we need.
If you really want to make your day, I mean, you could watch us on YouTube or on Twitter or, listen to the podcast on Spreaker and Apple iTunes and all that. But if you really want the real experience, go for the high def 70-inch version of the podcast, and it'll make your weekend, I'm sure, for those of you out there following along. Here on the First Call podcast, in all seriousness, we take a look at stakes races for the weekend. We've got 8 of them that Jeff has hand-selected to handicap this week. Let's take a look at the schedule that we have. For those of you watching on video, we'll run it down for those of you who are listening in on our audio podcast. The D Moselle, the Remsen, the Gopher Juan, and the Cigar Mile, 4 stakes races among, I believe, 6 offered Saturday at Aqueduct. So the big Cigar Mile Grade 1 feature race there, and we'll have 3 on the undercard to preview for you for a total of 4. At Del Mar on Saturday, they're running Jimmy Durante Stakes and also the Grade 1 Hollywood Derby on turf. And then on Sunday at Del Mar, the Cecil B. DeMille and the Matriarch Stakes, Grade 1 Matriarch for the Distaffers. One of the final big races of the year in Southern California every year, the Matriarch. Looking forward to that one on the Sunday card at Del Mar. So that's your 8 stakes lineup. And if you're playing this weekend with First Bet and Express Bet, certainly want to invite you to play those pick 4s at Aqueduct on Saturday. The early pick 4 and the middle pick 4 have a $2,500 hit and split each. The late pick 4, which includes the Cigar Mile, has a $5,000 hit and split. The hit and split simply means if you hit the pick 4, you'll get not only your pari-mutuel winnings, but you also take home your share of $5,000 just with other players on the platforms who happen to hit that pick 4 sequence, the platforms of Express Bet and First Bet. So, Jeff, we want people to send it in this weekend, and we're going to start our handicapping tour of the country at Aqueduct on Saturday with the $250,000 De Moselle Stakes. This is a 1 1/8 on the main track. Traditionally, a 1 1/8 for the De Moselle and the Remsen. It's really about the distance, but when you get to this time of the year, none of these horses are really cut out for a 1 1/8 at this time. And these races often turn out to be a bit of a carousel, if you will, where it's not really a closer's profile going a 1 1/8 for the 2-year-olds this time of year. Who did you end up with in the De Moselle?
Probably the same filly that everybody's going to end up eventually. Maybe not play her at 3 to 5 on the morning line, but Julia Shining, and you saw her at Keeneland when she won her debut, did everything wrong the first part of the race.
Right.
Finally figured things out and put in a move from the 3/8 pull of the wire, which was pretty impressive to be sure. I don't usually like to play fillies or any horse going from a maiden sprint to a 1 1/8 two-turn route race just in her second start. But in watching the video of this race, it's hard to get away from Julia Shining based on not only that race, but her pedigree as well.
Let's take a look back to Keeneland, where Julia Shining debuted October 16th.
Then Julia Shining. Now, Julia Shining and Positano Sunset swing to the center of the track. Julia Shining winding up down the far outside with a sweeping move off the far turn to come forward to challenge for the lead. Positano Sunset is trying to move up behind her. Julia Shining has the lead into the final furlong. Leads it by a length. Leads it by 2. Positano Sunset goes to second. 16th to go. Julia Shining, that move off the far turn, spectacular. Julia Shining wins it by 3 lengths on the line. Positano Sunset was across the wire in second.
Of course, Julia Shining, the full sister to Malathot, who won this race 2 years ago. And Todd Pletcher, of course, trains Malathot. He trains the sister here, Julia Shining. He also trained last year's winner of the De Moselle, Nest. So he's going for a three-peat, and he's going for his record-padding 8th win in this race all time. It sure seems a lot about Pletcher in this kind of race.
It does. And, he's got a filly here that really has the potential. We didn't show it in the video, but the first, I don't know, 1/8 of a mile, 3/16 of a mile, she was throwing her head up in the air. She getting the dirt. She didn't have any idea what she was doing.
Right.
And I thought at that stage, even though she was well touted in that race, she was the favorite. I thought, okay, well, she's going to need one. But then the acceleration that she displayed when she finally figured out that she's supposed to run was pretty impressive. And again, even though the step up, stretch out from 7 furlongs to 1 mile and 1/8, especially at Aqueduct, which can be a very testing surface at this time of the year, that's difficult. But in looking at this field, she has upside that the others just don't have, And whether or not this is a gamble or not, Jeremy, I don't know. I'm pretty sure it won't be at the price, but it's exciting to see what she will do in her second start. I mean, she might really be the goods. And if nothing else, I'll be watching the race just to see if we do have a star in the making. And based on her pedigree being by Curlin, who knows what her ceiling is really going to be.
When Malathot won this race 2 years ago, it was her 3rd career start. She was coming out of the Tempted Stakes at 1 mile, and that mile's kind of an important deal here. And if there is any sort of trip up here for Julia Shining, went back and looked through the BetMix database. The last 9 years, the De Moselle winners run 1 mile or more in the prep 7 times. And in the Remsen, it's 8 of the last 9 winners had come out of 1 mile or more. So put those two together and you're looking at 15 of the last 18 winners of these races run on Saturday at 1 mile and 1/8 for the 2-year-olds were won by horses exiting miles. There's not a lot of milers. All the horses in the Remsen are coming out of 1 mile, incidentally. But in the De Moselle, only Foggy Night, La Vida Sofia, and Gambling Girl come out of the mile. Gambling Girl trained by Todd Pletcher, who owns this race, as we had mentioned in recent years. Gambling Girl gets Irada Ortiz, New York bred, going against Open Company. On speed figures, none of these are particularly blazingly fast, so maybe competitive enough there. If you are looking to beat Julia Shining, it could be with the quote-unquote other Todd in here. Gambling Girl may be worth the shot coming out of that mile at least, but I wouldn't think that she can beat Julia Shining.
You wouldn't think so, and Todd probably doesn't think so either. But there's nothing wrong with getting grade 2 placing early in your career. She is a New York bred, probably won't have many opportunities like this, and she does have a very good foundation of already 5 races. And so I could see him hoping, if nothing else, that she can maybe get a piece of it and have that in her resume. But I think Julia Shining, the way she won first time out, you have to think that. He's thinking that she's going to win. And then again, at 3 to 5 in the morning line, there is no value other than to enjoy the prospect of watching a very good 2-year-old filly perform.
And if you're looking to pair her up in multi-race wagers, up next, race number 7, following the De Moselle, is the Remsen Stakes. So the Remsen Stakes, again, in 1 mile and 1/8 for the 2-year-olds. This is one where you kind of look down the list of trainers and you scratch your head a bit that this is the Remsen Stakes. Antonio Sano, John Service, James Chapman, Linda Rice, Peter Walder, Horatio DePaz, and Danny Gargan. I mean, really, Linda Rice is the only tried and true New York based trainer even in this race. Gargan has a string, of course, up in New York, but this is not the Shug McGahee, Todd Pletcher, Chad Brown group that we're used to seeing in a race like the Remsen. So where do you end up turning in this one, Jeff?
Well, again, 8 to 5 on the morning line and not a lot of value there, but Tuskegee Airman is a street sense colt, and he's won both of his starts kind of off the beaten path. One at Parks, very impressive that way, and then won a little listed stakes at Delaware around 2 turns, in which a race in which he looked like he was going nowhere, and then all of a sudden in the final, 3/16 of a mile, the light switch went up, and he drew off and won, and he did so with a pretty good number, 84 Buyer number, very good, and did it easily. At least he was easily from the 16th pull of the wire. So he's intriguing to me. And he cost $290 as a yearling. So he's obviously good looking and well put together and obviously nicely bred. But in this race, Jeremy, we talked about this several weeks ago. The race call was such where the announcer didn't think he was going anywhere. Visually, he looked like he wasn't going anywhere. But then all of a sudden, he took off. And today, because he's already been a mile, I don't think the mile and an eighth is going to bother him at all. In fact, it actually might promote his chances, and I think he's got every chance to win right back.
Let's go back and see Tuskegee Airman in the aptly named Rocky Run Stakes.
And Tuskegee Airman is not responding as of yet as they turn for home. Midnight Trouble, Tuskegee Airman. Now Tuskegee Airman comes with a big run up the fence and now finally hits that best stride. And Tuskegee Airman at 1-2 finally inherits the lead. Midnight Trouble has nowhere to give, and Riccio is in trouble and completes the trifecta. Tuskegee Airman and Paco Lopez have won the Rocky Run Stakes over Midnight Trouble, Riccio, and Data Man.
Paco Lopez aboard that day. Luis Saez will be aboard for the Remsen Stakes, and that's a return pairing. Saez was at Parks for Pennsylvania Derby Day when Tuskegee Airman won in the career debut. He wasn't supposed to win that debut. John Service had a more expensive and a colt they thought better named Didinger, who ran second that day, and Tuskegee Airman drilled Didinger, who then came back to win his next start. So the running lines are pretty good for Tuskegee Airman. He's got the 2-turn win you just saw there at Delaware. That should be pretty important in this spot. Jeff, who do you like underneath perhaps, or an alternative to Tuskegee Airman? Do you have anybody else you got an eye on?
Well, Arctic Arrogance looks like a colt that he's bifrosted, so he should run all day. And he's got numbers that are progressing, and he's got a nice win at Aqueduct. He's stretching out for the first time. So, and he's got speed. I mean, he's going to be in the front end, and I doubt they'll be going very fast the first part. Most everybody will be taking a hold, trying to get their colt to get the trip. So he looks like, for Linda Rice, Arctic Arrogance is going to give Tuskegee Airman a good run. And I think both should make nice 3-year-olds. So that makes this race even more impressive than just trying to gamble on it.
Il Miracolo, the one, is an interesting one by Gun Runner out of a Tappet mare. Only cost $70,000. So obviously there were some physical issues probably going through the sales ring at that point. But the light bulb came on last time for trainer Antonio Sano after a couple 3 second place finishes, a dominant win. I like that nibbler breaks out, I like to call it. You know, a horse has just been close, and then all of a sudden when they win convincingly. Maybe the one Il Miracolo one to keep an eye on here. And interesting too, because you've got races at Gulfstream right off the bat, the Mucho Macho Man on January 1st coming up in a month, and they want to run here in the Remsen for graded money around 2 turns. I think it's interesting placement when they could stay home 4 weeks from now and run in the Mucho Macho Man. So Il Miracolo, the one horse I want to keep my eye on here in the Remsen Stakes. Let's turn our attention next at Aqueduct to our third stakes to preview, and the third on the card at Aqueduct that we'll look at, that being the Grade 3 Go for Juan. This is a 1-turn mile stakes in the filly and mare division, as you'd expect, named for the great Go for Juan, the mare who ill-fated end to her career, but a brilliant race mare on the racetrack. Jeff, the Go for Juan Stakes, Aqueduct race number 8. Where are you looking?
This was not an easy race for me. You have horses coming from various parts and stretching out and dropping back in trip. Battle Bling has won her last 3, and she's done so over a distance of ground, 2 turns. Now she's backing up to a 1-turn mile. And you got to go back a ways on the form to find a 1-turn mile race for her. And you can do that earlier this year when she ran the Heavenly Prize, got beat a neck. That's right. She got beaten by Bank Sting, who's in here. So I looked at her, but I also looked at Bank Sting. I like the draw with Rosario out there. She's actually going in the other direction. She's stretching out, and the other one's backing up. And generally speaking, when I see a 1-turn mile race, if I have a difficult time separating the two main contenders, I usually like the one that's stretching out more than the one
Yeah.
that's backing up, and that gave me the ability to come up with a selection here. Not only that, Banks Sting. I mean, you like 6 out of 8 lifetime wins at Aqueduct. That kind of jumps off the page. 8 out of 13 numbers that are solid for the level. And I mean, she's a New York bred, but she can run with anybody. I gave Banks Sting a slight edge. It's a good race. I mean, it's a grade 3, but it looks a little more difficult, a little more contentious than that.
Yeah, you got horses in good form. I mean, you got 4 last out winners in here. You've got horses with some good pace going short. You got some routers cutting back. This should be a good betting race. And as you look, the Remsen, maybe you got a short price with the Siegel Jeremy. The prior race to that, the Day Moselle, with Julia in there, you're probably going to look at a short price on Julia Shining. So if you're playing the multi-race wagers, and again, those pick 4 hit and splits that we're talking about late in the day at Aqueduct for the promotion, this is the race where you probably want to try to get a little bit of a price and a chance where you could go more than 1 or 2 deep and come up with a good option. And, I always like to spread a little bit in races with good options, not races that have terrible options and you're just trying to stick and find a winner at some point. So good options abound in race number 8 to go for 1. Let's go to the featured race on the card. It's the Grade 1 Cigar Mile, race number 9. It's our Express Bet race of the week. If you get the Express Bet email newsletter, you got my analysis in your inbox. We know this. Obesos will scratch due to a quarantine issue in Kentucky, not able to head out of town. So we will not have Obesos in here, which is going to lead to a field of 6, Jeff. You got the 2 3-year-olds in here, Zandon and White Barrio. They're major stakes winners. Of course, White Barrio, winner of the Florida Derby, and Zandon at his best, winning the Bluegrass at Keeneland earlier this year in the final career start to match up with Mind Control. So you've got the veteran Mind Control in here against the 2 upstart 3-year-olds. Is it one of those 3? Do you have a thought on somebody else?
No, I actually like Zandon here. I really do. I mean, nothing wrong with Mind Control. You talk about a horse for course, won 4 out of 7, like the outside draw. He's won 11 races in his career. He's tough as nails. He's got several triple-digit buyer numbers. If you like Mind Control, I will not talk you off him. He's going to get a great trip, and he's just a tough horse. But Zandon, to me, is a horse that he won his first start sprinting, and ever since then he's been going long. I mean long, 1.8 miles, 1.25 miles type races. He was second in the Pennsylvania Derby in his last start. Nothing wrong with finishing second to Taba. He had Cyberknife behind him. So numbers wise, he's never been faster, and he's dropping back to a 1-turn mile, which may very well be his best trip. I mean, sometimes, these 3-year-olds who are going for all the glory in the Triple Crown series, they don't get a chance to run around 1 turn. They're already, running long, and in Zandon's case, he certainly ran well, obviously won the Bluegrass, and was very impressive in doing so. But backing up to the mile, I think this might really be a good trip for him. He can kind of settle and make that one blast home. And while he did so in the Bluegrass, I'm not so sure the Cigar Mile shouldn't be right up his alley.
And Chad Brown cutting him back to the mile distance. Interesting stat through the BetMix database I found doing the race of the week. 1-turn miles at Aqueduct the last 3 years, Chad Brown wins 40%. 40% in 1-turn miles. And he probably lost a bunch of those running against himself, running all the countries and races. But Zandon at his best, let's go back and look at him in the spring at Keeneland.
Moving by the quarter pole, Emmanuel, the leader. Smile Happy now takes aim from the outside. Here's Smile Happy to take the lead from Emmanuel into the final furlong, and Zandon is running late. Zandon has moved through all kinds of traffic from the back of the pack, and he is now taking command in deep stretch. It's over. Zandon wins the Toyota Bluegrass with a dramatic stretch run for Flavian Pratt. Smile Happy had to settle for second, 1 minute 50.35 seconds.
That makes me sad. I miss my buddy, the Smile Happy, Jeff. Really was a big fan of him at 2 and early through the 3-year-old year. But Zandon at his best there in the Bluegrass. What do you make of White Barrio here? This is a horse who looks to be training well on the work tab. 5 strong works at this. I believe 3 of them bullet works for Safi Joseph. And this is a horse you would think on timing and locale would be gearing himself up perhaps for the Pegasus World Cup back at 1 1/8 miles coming up at the end of January. But this is a big race. It's a grade 1. There's a lot of money on the line in the Cigar Mile. White Barrio's chances.
Couple things about Whiteborough. Number one, I always thought him of as being a Gulfstream Park specialist. In fact, after winning the Florida Derby, he ran 4 times, and 2 of them were really kind of bad races. And I think maybe that's a possibility. But there's also a possibility, again, we've talked about this a bunch of times. We mentioned it with Zen, that he's dropping back to a one-turn race. He won his debut by almost 7 lengths, going 6.5 at Gulfstream. Came back and ran a one-turn mile, won that race. And he's been routing ever since. Maybe dropping back to a one-turn race will bring out his best, or maybe he just is a Gulfstream Park specialist. But there's enough there to wonder whether or not we're going to see the really good version of Whiteborough. He's been freshened since the 3rd week of September. It looks like he's training really well at Gulfstream Park, rather than waiting around for the beginning of the championship meeting there at the day after Christmas. Obviously, Safi Joseph thinks he's doing well enough to shoot for this race. And I wouldn't be surprised if he runs really well and he gets a chance to prove that he can do things good right outside of Gulfstream. And maybe this is his trip as well. So he just adds fuel to the fire in making this race a really interesting race.
Not a ton of speed on paper in the Cigar Mile. Don't know where it might come from. But remember Mind Control's race when he took on Hot Rod Charlie in the Salvatore Mile? And we said, if John Velasquez gets aggressive early and this horse is in the race, he might stay there a long while. He did there around 2 turns. I think Velasquez probably rides similarly on Mind Control, and this being the final race of his career. I think they're just going to go and leave everything they have on the track and see if they can hold off the 3-year-old. Should be an interesting edition of the Cigar Mile. Let's turn our attention to Del Mar on Saturday, where a couple stakes races are in the offering. The Jimmy Durante Stakes, 1 mile on the turf there for the 2-year-old fillies. Jimmy Durante in the 7th, and then we'll take a look at the 9th race, the Hollywood Derby. So a couple grass stakes to look at here in Southern California. Jeff, Del Mar, turf course here during the fall, and any thought about the way the course has been playing or what people should be looking for in their turf races at Del Mar this weekend?
I haven't found a bias. I mean, there's always a pace bias where if they go too fast, the closers have a chance. If they go too slow, the leader could steal it. At this race, I mean, I spent more time on this race than I should have. And the reason for that is because I started off with Chad Brown Shipper. I let the agents, the jockey agents, kind of tell me where the contention was. And of course, Flavian Pratt riding Liguria. I didn't really care for her post, but I figured, okay, a Warfront filly, gave her a race first time out, won her maiden, shipping out here, obviously a very important race for a filly bred like she is. And I watched the video of the race. It wasn't blown away or anything like that. She didn't really show the turn of foot that I really thought I wanted to see in a race at Del Mar, going a mile with a short stretch and all that, and a poor post. So I went fishing. I looked at every other horse, watched all the tapes. I looked at decorated my live races in Europe video, which we have at ExpressBet. Looked at those, and I circled back. I didn't want to, but I circled back to Liguria by default. But I don't think she has to win. I mean, there are a number of these fillies that look like they're capable of improving. Quickly Parker won a race up north of stakes at Golden Gate Fields by 6. Looked really good doing it until I realized that they all fell down in front of her, and maybe she wasn't as good as that margin makes her look. A few others I looked at. I mentioned Decorated My Life. I'm not sure if she's a miler. She looks more like a sprinter to me based on her Euro form. I looked at The Best Is Yet to Be. I wasn't crazy about her, although I love Phil D'Amato. So I ended up going back to Pratt and Chad Brown. Man, if you could talk me into something else, I'm all ears. I'm telling you.
This is an interesting race. It's a melting pot of horses from all over, right? You've got a couple coming from the east to the west. You've got horses with running lines at Delaware and Remington and Golden Gate and Ireland. And, it's kind of a clash where they're all going to get together. So, evaluating the class of these horses is very difficult, right? I mean, there's not a lot of common denominators in the races they run in. So to me, you kind of make a pace play in a race like this. When I can't figure out the class, I don't know which horse. There's too many intersectional matchups and things I don't know in here. So, maybe try to figure out the pace in this race, and it's the way to go. And it looks to be a fair amount of early speed in here. So this is a race, I think, where you can get a horse from off the pace to close. And really, I mean, Liguria is probably the best closer in the race, and that's the deal. The others in here, maybe Lolly Gumdrop coming off of the synthetic race up in Northern California, be a little bit further back. I always like the Twirling Candies and running down there at Del Mar. So Lollipop Gumdrop at a big price, maybe for underneath, but it looks like probably the race will set up for Liguria and maybe Quickly Park It. Quickly Park It beat Calbreds on the turf here at Del Mar, has a race over the track and a win there. So maybe we'll get one of the McCarthys in there, Michael McCarthy or Sean McCarthy underneath with their two runners, but it's probably Liguria's race based on the pace setup. And you take a look at all the other factors that you're trying to figure out. And then the pace also favors the horse you're trying to avoid at a short price. So it's probably one just to kind of accept and move on. We will move on to the Hollywood Derby next. It's race number 9 on the card Saturday at Del Mar, a mile and an eighth on the turf here. 3-year-olds, of course, in Derby time. And Jeff, this is a group that really never separated itself this year. The Del Mar Derby won by Slow Down Andy. The Ocean side was Balnikov. We just never got a standout star in the 3-year-old turf division this year, I thought, in Southern California. So as we get to the end of the year, somebody from the home team holds down the fort, or are we looking for somebody from out of town?
Well, that's a good point, Jeremy, because we've seen a lot of the locally based 3-year-olds throughout the year, and you're right. Nobody ever stepped up and proved to be decidedly better than anybody else. I mean, all these races always the field's always kind of finished in a heap. Cabo, Spirit, and Script, and horses like that. Although Script is not a local horse, but he did run in the Let It Ride, which was a decent sort of race, but not a great race. Handy Dandy's been around for a while, doing some decent work. War at Sea. I mean, they're all the same. So really, I looked at Celestial City and I looked at this Uncle Mo colt, and who doesn't love Uncle Mo? Shug sends him out here, and you look at his form. He was 3rd in the Hall of Fame. He was, second behind Annapolis, who was a good colt that really would be favored in this race for sure. Then puts together a nice allowance win, and then the Hill Prince, when he really accelerated in the final stages. I don't know if you can believe the time or not, but he went probably 11 and small change if the clocking is accurate, and he accelerated nicely. I like where he's drawn, and I like the fact that he can accelerate, which is what you need on this course. So based on what I saw in the Hill Prince, I don't see any reason why Celestial City, who's got numbers that are rising with every start, and there's no reason to think he won't take another forward move here. I like Celestial City. I really do.
Let's go back and take a look at that win in the Hill Prince.
In between horses, Celestial City is making a move. They turn for home. It's McKinnon who takes it to Nantasket Beach. Celestial City is looking for room to the inside of Constitution Lawyer. Now tips towards the outside. McKinnon's got the lead. Celestial City is in pursuit. Up on the far outside is Grand Sonata, who's in the clear. Celestial City is now pushed on past McKinnon. It's Celestial City who's going to win the Hill Prince. Celestial City over a tight photo there. McKinnon with an oncoming wicked fast from out of nowhere, and Grand Sonata in 1 minute 50.27 seconds.
Well, Jeff, this is a way we can play a little bit of this East Coast, West Coast thing, because McKinnon was the Doug O'Neill Southern California horse who came in to the East Coast and was no match for Celestial City. Blew that Californian away. You look at the other New Yorker in this race, it's Witt, and this Todd Pletcher trainee. Last time out, ran in the Bryan Station, was surprisingly upset, I thought, that day by Balnikov, a Southern California horse. So Witt couldn't beat the Californian. Celestial City easily dispatched the Californian. He was against, I know it's a little not necessarily apples to apples, but at least we're not apples to oranges. We're somewhere in the middle. We got a couple pairs here, maybe, to compare. And I think that Celestial City versus Witt in that matchup of Pletcher and McGahee both coming west. I'm with you. I lean to Celestial City over Witt in that head to head.
I like Balnikov in that race, and he had an impossible task when he beat Witt. To this day, I don't know how Witt managed to lose that race. But you're right. I mean, Balnikov's one of these. We talked about the Cabo Spirits of the world, and that's what he is. Right. He was sent back there because he's basically a miler. He's got a good late kick, and I could see Witt win, but Witt's going to get a lot of play because of Pratt, and he should. Right. But to me, Celestial City, he might have a little bit better turn of foot, and I think that's what I'm leaning on here. Going a mile, you got a very short run in from the top of the stretch to the wire, and sometimes the holes don't stay open very long. And if you've got an opening, you better be able to get through it like now. You better have that 0 to 60, acceleration. And I got the impression based on what I saw at Celestial City, at least at this stage of his career, has that. And I'm not so sure Witt does.
I'm with you on this one. We're both in on Celestial City in the Hollywood Derby. Let's go to Sunday for a couple stakes races at Old Del Mar, the Cecil B. DeMille and the Matriarch. Cecil B. DeMille is 2-year-olds on the turf going a mile. This is the brother race, if you will, to the Jimmy Durante on Saturday, where the 2-year-old fillies are going the mile. Race number 5 is the place on the program for the Cecil B. DeMille. Jeff, who'd you go with?
Funny thing about Cecil B. DeMille, he is the grandfather of Joe Harper, who runs Del Mar, or at least.
Is that right?
Yeah. And the funny thing about Cecil B. DeMille is he's very famous in Hollywood because he was a incredibly successful movie director in his day, way back in the 40s. Most of us have seen the 10 Commandments, the movie, and all of that. He used to have these massive Hollywood productions. He produced Cleopatra with Elizabeth Taylor. But he's more famous for something else, as far as I'm concerned, and that is the line in Blazing Saddles by Gene Wilder and the Waco Kid, who said, "I've killed more men than Cecil B. DeMille." And the reason for that, of course, is because DeMille's movies were always known for being these massive Hollywood productions with 10,000 extras, all of whom usually ended up dying. So,
right. Massive war scenes. Yeah.
Right. So I've killed more men than Cecil B. DeMille. That's from Blazing Saddles. And but he's also the grandfather, as I mentioned, of Joe Harper. And this race has always been a popular race with the California 2-year-old trainers because it's grass. It's a grade 3. Basically, you're facing maiden winners, and it's got a decent sort of purse. And I looked at this race as a very competitive race, a race with plenty of speed, including Speedboat Beach, the Bob Baffert trained colt who broke a track record at Del Mar first time out. Then won a race on grass at Santa Anita Speakeasy. He was disappointed in the Breeders' Cup turf, but he's come back and trained really well. And most trainers in California, because they cannot train on dirt, train their grass horses on the training track, taking advantage of those sharp turns. And I got to tell you, Speedboat Beach has never looked better. He's gone a black type working 59 and change into the bridle every step of the way, not even looking like he's getting tired, and then galloping out full of runs. So I got a hunch that his first time around 2 turns, he's going to bust to the front and run everybody into the ground. And if he's ever going to get a mile, it'll be under these conditions. And like I say, he's strong, training and galloping out past the wire into the backstretch. And I mean, he's by a Breeders' Cup Classic winner. So there's no reason for me to believe that at least in his first start, he won't bust out and maybe just run everybody into the ground in a race that doesn't really have a really great late running late kicker in the field.
That's the thing, because I'm looking here and I'm thinking first piece is really fast, right? 45 and change fast. Game time looks very fast. And you get Speedboat Beach. Who can close here? But there's not a real strong kicker, like you said at the end. Maybe Ransomware is going to get a good trip on the inside, out of the 2-hole. Taking Phil D'Amato in a turf stakes race is never a bad idea in Southern California. If somebody's going to win from off the pace, maybe it's Ransomware in here. But the class of the race appears to be the horses with the early speed, though, and we'll see if one of those just doesn't take it. Let's go to the Matriarch Stakes, Jeff, our final handicapping destination of the weekend. It's Sunday, race number 7 at Del Mar. This race has been just one of the really classy races after Thanksgiving every year that you just look forward to towards the end of the calendar. Matriarch Stakes, 1 mile for the fillies and mares. Good eclectic mix of horses from all over the country. Pizza Bianca coming west, Waka Naka coming west, and of course you've got the California horses holding down the fort, Avenue de France and others in here. England's Rose. We don't have Going Global in here though, and that's one that those kind of Californians you expect to see in this race. Who's the other one? Going Global and
Going to Vegas?
And Going to Vegas, right.
Yeah.
I knew there's similar names.
Yeah.
You used to seeing those two in all these races. Neither are in this one, but a good mix of runners east and west.
Well, this is an interesting race. With Hanwood Flyer in the race, she's a complete runoff. Very fast, and she managed to win the swing time, but you can't really rate her. I mean, she's going to go 45 and drag everybody with her. And as much as she might look to be tempting in this race, I mean, she's I don't know if she's this good. I mean, she's one of these fillies that kind of runs on one breath. She opens up and kind of hangs on. If she ever learned to relax and switch off and go the first half in 46 and change, as opposed to 45 and 1, 45 and 2, she might be unbeatable. But so she's going to be tempting. But I got a hunch, and what I've seen of her, I don't think she's kind of learned that yet. She's only had 7 starts, so maybe there's still improvement in her. And again, if she ever learns to relax early, look out. But this is a race that, to me, is a race in which I think a closer is going to win it. And Regal Glory, to me, was the kind of filly that is hang on just for a second as I get rid of this. Okay. And to me, this is a filly that would have been 2 to 5 in this race if she was in her summer form, but she's not. Right. And even though Wakanaka does not have the resume, she ran against Regal Glory back in June when Regal Glory was really, really good and Wakanaka wasn't there yet. She only, she finished second. I mean, now I think Wakanaka, based on her win at Keeneland, even though she didn't beat this level of competition, I really think Wakanaka is stepping forward considerably. She's won 8 out of 15 in good hands, and I think, based on the pace projection, Jeremy, she's going to have plenty of heat to chase, and I think it could complement her style because she came against moderate fractions when she won on Breeders' Cup Day in the last race, and I thought looked really good doing it.
Yeah, it's one race that might get lost in the shuffle after the Classic, and everybody's kind of, moving on to the next stage. But she left a good last impression. Let's go back to it at Keeneland.
Wakanaka last. Burning Ambition leads. Henrietta Topham tries to move up behind her. Then Dalika. Then Stolen Holiday. Now Stolen Holiday comes running after Burning Ambition. Henrietta Topham still hunting racing room. And here comes Wakanaka down the center of the course. Burning Ambition. Wakanaka far outside. Henrietta Topham toward the inside. Wakanaka hits another gear in deep stretch for Joel Rosario. Wakanaka to win it. Henrietta Topham second. Burning Ambition across the line third. And Stolen Holiday was fourth.
Looked a bit like her more accomplished barnmate, Warlike Goddess, in that race. Really nice finish there for the Belmont trainee. But again, you've got Regal Glory in here. You've got Dolce Zell for Chad Brown, the 2 Brown fillies. You got Pizza Bianca, former Breeders' Cup winner. Wakanaka, Avenue de France, a good one. England's Rose. Not a ton of speed in here to go, with the big speed ball in here, Hamwood Flyer. So maybe Hamwood Flyer, if you want to take the pace play and just go winging out there. There's not a ton of other speed in here to go into Matriarch. And nobody really wants to go that fast, right?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you one thing about Hamwood Flyer. Everybody's going to concede the lead to her. And if she can just slow down a little bit, and again, with just 7 starts, she's got upside that some of the others don't. I'm certainly not going to play a ticket with that doesn't include her somewhere. I mean, she'll take care of any speed you want, and if she figures that she's going to drag everybody with her, then I'm going to also gamble on Wakanaka, who came, getting good. I mean, she's, she was a pretty good Italian filly, and she earned decent time form ratings there before she showed up here, and maybe wasn't quite up to this level of competition, but now maybe she is.
That'll wrap up our 8 stakes to handicap on the podcast this week. Plenty of more racing action around the country, though, besides just at Aqueduct and out of Del Mar. Big racing day on Saturday for the 2-year-olds in Maryland. The winners of the Maryland Million fillies and Maryland Million Colts divisions are both back in action. Chickiness and Johnny's from Albany. They'll compete in separate stakes races, the Maryland Juvenile Fillies and the Maryland Juvenile Championship Saturday at Laurel Park. Be sure to check that out. And Gulfstream Park's got turf racing back. It was supposed to return on Thursday, but Mother Nature rained it out. But the grass course is getting good reviews. We should be on it this weekend with a lot of good grass racing. And to welcome you back to betting Gulfstream Park and the grass races there with Express Bet and First Bet this weekend. Every race, 10 times Express Bet wager rewards points on every bet you make at Gulfstream over the course of Friday, Saturday, Sunday, this coming weekend. So be sure to check that out. And don't forget those $10,000 in late pick 4, middle pick 4, and early pick 4 hit and splits. $10,000 total on Saturday when you bet the pick 4s at Aqueduct on the Cigar Mile Day card. Jeff, final thoughts here. Your Bruins got a nice win last night. Too late for me to stay up for the end of the game, but you had it well in hand before bed.
I mean, it's still a great sports weekend. They got the Pac-12 championship game. Everybody is a Utah fan this week. Everybody that I know, including you, I'm sure. Yes. So we'll watch that, and then of course some really good football, college football championship games tomorrow. Trying to figure out who's going to be in the the playoffs. So with great horse racing, you mentioned Laurel, great gambling there. You got the great racing in at Aqueduct and Del Mar, and I've got. You mentioned TV that you bought. I might have to go buy that. Buy 2 more, 3 more to keep it. I got my own private sports book here, but I could still use a few more of these big screens. So that
time of year
might give me something to do today.
On behalf of everybody with First Technologies, my partner Jeff Siegel, I'm Jeremy Plonk. Have a great week. We will be back on Tuesday for It's Official when we take 5 topics from this past weekend and put our spin on them and make them official. Have a great weekend, everybody.